This episode is sponsored by Bigger City. Thank you so much for supporting us and helping our show to grow.
Hello and welcome back to the Big Fat Gay Podcast, where we love to talk about the things that are weighing on our minds. My name's Don Marshall. I'm a big chubby guy living here in sunny Hollywood, and today I am an October spooky boy, loving life. This is my favorite time of the year. I love Halloween, everything leading up to it. So I'm happy and spooky.
Hey, I'm Dan Oliverio, author, public speaker, and chubby chaser, and I too favor the autumnal season. Not so much the pumpkin spice latte. I think that can go fuck itself. But I really do like the fall in the Northern Hemisphere.
I'm Trevor Keyson. Everyone just looked at me very...
Because I need you to defend me.
I'm Trevor Keyson. I'm a super chub, and I'm also a spooky boy. I like the pumpkins. I like the ghouls and the goblins. And I like remembering being a child with tiny little hands and cupping an apple, and the air is crisp, and you're at like a fall festival, and you just take a bite, and it's just the freshest apple you've ever had.
That crunch, that first crunch.
Yeah, San Diego, we didn't have that.
Yeah, Dan is out of the loop in this one. Hi, my name is Michael Willer. I'm a chubby chaser, and I'll be the basic bitch of the podcast today. I like pumpkin spice lattes.
Well, somebody does. This is so goddamn popular.
Pumpkin spice needs defending.
Yeah. Does it? Does it really?
No.
It's everywhere.
I'm kidding.
Just walking through Trader Joe's right now is like pumpkin spice trauma.
God.
It's like a pumpkin spice monster just exploded and his blood is everywhere.
Because it's autumnal.
Oh, fuck you.
A quick little hack for you if you're a pumpkin spice latte girly. Replace half of that pumpkin spice sauce with white mocha, and you will have a delicious, creamy, pumpkin-y treat.
That sounds better.
God, it's like a jack-o'-lantern coming in its pants.
We want to say... We want to say thank you to all of our Patreons who make it possible for us to talk about pumpkins coming in their pants. We want to thank Big Fig for being our wonderful associate sponsor and helping us keep going. And Bearskin for giving us a wonderful 15% off promo code, Big Fat Gay Pod.
And Bigger City.
Yeah, so thank you for everyone for helping us keep the project going.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Before we dive in, this is Future Michael here. We have decided that we're going to do another Halloween movie this year, and we wanted to let you know early so that you could have a chance to watch it yourselves. We are going to be watching the 1985 cult classic, The Stuff. It is a campy, fun horror movie about this mysterious, delicious dessert that people just can't stop eating and the horrible things that happens to them. So if you want to be in on the joke while we do that episode, go ahead and watch The Stuff, 1985, sometime between now and October 30th, which is when that episode will come out. All right, back to the episode.
We do have our 200th episode coming up, Michael. What are we hoping for?
So we are, as you may have heard by now, we are going to be doing a listener write-in show. We're going to be taking your stories, if you want to leave us like a voice memo to share your story. If you have questions, we'll take questions too, but we basically want to make it about you guys. We want to hear what you have to say, anything you may have experienced as a result of the show, any kind of changes you've been through, or maybe things that you felt encouraged to try out or do differently.
We've been doing this for a few years now, so we are expecting some people to have gone through some major changes, not necessarily because of us, but life has changed since we started doing this podcast. And we want to hear
nothing's
how yours
happened since January 2020.
We literally launched the show January 1st, 2020. It was a Wednesday. I've heard anecdotally from dozens upon dozens of people that I've talked to over the last 4.5 years about things that have, like, from our show directly, that have changed their perspective in their lives. And so it'd be nice to kind of just aggregate that all and create like a nice big positive groundswell going into our 200s. It would help keep us going. Yeah.
I think that's the real lesson here.
Yeah.
Yeah. A very aggregating experience.
So with that said, why don't we roll into pop culture?
Here we go.
Doobie Slide and jazz hands.
So from Fortune, we have some news about the secondhand luxury fashion
This is
market
fascinating.
thriving as Ozempic users are purging clothes from their closets.
I need this explained to me. I read this and I was like, what am I missing? What context am I missing here? I don't understand what I'm reading.
People giving away to whatever, reselling or donating, whatever, their fat clothes, now that they're on Ozempic or Wegovy and have lost a considerable amount of weight and need new clothes. And this is, here we have Ozempic, the whole weight loss industry, as another economic driver of our economy, because now people are getting new clothes, buying new clothes, donating new clothes, buying secondhand clothes. But the story is how the secondary clothing market is exploding in clothing. Which means because as people slim down to those sizes, they are able to buy these secondhand clothes of the people who have left those sizes.
Right.
Which is, I'm excited by that prospect because I can't tell you, like, I would go into these thrift stores with friends and like they'd be looking at clothes. There's nothing for me. I might be able to find a pair of shoes, maybe.
Yeah. And that's an issue that comes up sometimes, like when California was having all those fires and people lost their clothes and people were donating clothing. It's like, yeah, but there's a lot of people who don't fit in that clothing.
Well, I asked it like Out of the Closet, which is a sort of a Goodwill chain here in LA. They weren't really that interested in my clothing when I was giving it away because they don't have a section for it, I guess.
I think it's weird because I think fat people have been trained not to shop in thrift stores beyond a certain size. And therefore thrift stores can't move that merchandise.
And their suggestion to me was always to donate it to homeless shelters. They said that they had a need.
They do. They certainly do. So I think the other thing that's fascinating about this article is it points to, and this is how it's framed in the article. The article frames it like, now that people are getting down to a non-gross size, they will invest in clothing that is not fast fashion.
Yeah.
Oh.
And which is, even if it's true, it's kind of a backwards way of saying it's like, oh, you don't look like shit anymore. It makes clothing worthwhile for you.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's so common. And I feel like so often when people lose weight or, I mean, especially celebrities, it's like, they get a new haircut and they do all this stuff. And it's like, they look amazing. It's but they like, if they had done some of these things when they were larger, they could have still felt good and looked amazing. But it's like, I'm not worthy of having a cute haircut until I lose enough weight.
Or a cute wardrobe. Yeah.
I feel like, tell me if this is a step too far, but I feel like this happens a lot when I'm like looking, I'm on Bigger City and I'm kind of looking through like profile pictures. And it's like, I get why it's hard to take those steps, certainly in the realm of like getting like nice haircuts where you have to find a place that will accommodate you. You have to find somebody you're comfortable with. And sometimes it's easier to just ignore it or stay out of, but like, with just like a little bit of cleanup work, with a little bit of that extra effort that maybe you feel uncomfortable with, or I don't know, like whatever, or it's easier to just not worry about it. Like you could raise your level by several points.
A man I was dating at the time had the best and worst expression for this. You'd see someone who, usually a fat guy who was not well put together and could be. Because, the guy I was dating was very fat and very well put together. And he'd be like, oh my God, someone call FAG 911.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
I don't think you do.
You don't? Okay, no.
Well, I can tell you when I came out, right? Like there was very little fanfare for my coming out. And none of my gay friends came to my rescue to help me dress differently.
Oh God.
So like, I feel like and I'm hoping the world has changed. This was the 90s, right? That I'm hoping that maybe there are people out there right now that are willing to give a little more guidance to people
in the
as they go through these
90s,
changes.
There was a whole trope in the 90s of like, you come out of the closet and now it's time to lose weight. Like, because now there's something to lose weight for.
Well, and gay, there was the way of accepting gay, I feel like in the 80s and 90s was by associating gay with like the hypermasculine gym bunny, like somebody who was, he's gay, so he's so fit and well dressed. Like, is that not a thing? Like,
that was a trope, but it wasn't exclusively that. But it was basically looking sexy and white.
Yeah.
Very white.
Very white.
No ethnicity.
Very like Out magazine cover.
Yeah. And they didn't have, and certainly they didn't have to be bodybuilders, though there was a fad of that, and that's another episode. But it was basically, you have to look like you stepped off the set of Will and Grace.
Right.
Something else I thought was interesting from this article is, so they're going through some statistics about increases in different size listings on Poshmark, which is one of these resale sites. So 103 increase in listings for size 3XL.
I'm sorry, 103%.
Yes. Increase.
Jesus, that's more than double.
80% for 4XL, 73% for 5XL, but also a 70% increase in new items with the term weight loss in the description or title.
Now, this is what's being donated, not what's being bought, correct?
What's being sold.
What's being sold. All right, good.
Fascinating.
And I just think it's so interesting to, I've been on Poshmark. I think it's weird that it would be in the title, maybe not the description, like, oh, I had weight loss surgery or something, or I went through a weight loss and I'm clearing out my closet.
Oh, yeah.
That might be a bragging point.
Yeah, people are real proud.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what my closet might have looked like when I was shopping for 5X if my taste hadn't been dictated by Casual Male and DXL.
Right.
The only places I could find.
Well, that's
clothing
really
in
the
my
question,
size.
isn't it? Well, I mean, so much of fashion is telling you what you want, telling you what you should like. But, with Fat Men's clothing particularly, it's just that whole black, brown, navy crap.
Whoever runs DXL is responsible for half my wardrobe.
It's funny with DXL. What I have found is that if you visit stores in certain parts of the country, they will have a much wider selection than what's online. Online, it is just black, brown, navy. But if you actually walk into a DXL in a different market, in a more upscale market, you will find, and especially in Southern California, you will find color.
Yeah.
Good God.
Yeah, DXL does have some variety. It's variety if you're going for a certain look. Like, I feel like they can do like preppy, like Argyle vests and collared shirt kind of thing.
I think it depends on the part of the country you're in. It really does. If you go to the Northeast, yes. I mean, even as a straight size, if I go to the Northeast, it's still black, brown, navy creme.
No, I'm talking about literally a DXL that I went to in Massachusetts.
Right. That's my point.
Yeah.
So, but if you go to Southern California, you will find Henry Grethel. You'll find designer clothes that are really outrageous to go up to 4X.
I think there are certain categories that DXL leans into.
Yeah.
They have the preppy, they have the business casual, they have redneck tailgate.
Yep.
I think is the best way to call it.
Yep.
No, that's fair.
Those categories get shifted around between different regions, right?
Yes.
So like where I shop, you get business, it's heavy on the business casual, right? And then the redneck trucker section is sort of right behind that against the wall.
Yeah.
And then you have like elite high business, $500 and up stuff on this other wall.
Yeah, the suits.
That like, I just can't go there.
Well, and some few of us in Southern California need suits.
A suit. Wearing a suit in California is a huge choice.
It's bizarre. Are you a lawyer? That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you're a fat man that does need to dress that way, it's nice to know there is somewhere besides Men's Warehouse.
Yeah. Well, fat lawyers.
Yeah.
No, and then there's just King Size Direct, which is like
We get fucking catalogs from them like every month, and like, stop wasting trees.
Yeah.
We don't need that shit. Like, come on. I know that it generates business for them, but come on.
Yeah.
So long story short, this is maybe providing an opening for some of us to visit some of those thrift stores again and see maybe there's something there for us.
That really is it.
Yeah.
That's the moral of the story, is that thrift stores may not be a desert.
Take a chance. Go in, wander around with some friends, see if there's something good for you.
A side note, and this is not really the point of the article, but they quote a statistic that 1 in 8 people have been on some kind of GLP-1 drug.
Yes.
What the fuck? Are you kidding? That's real?
Well, remember, it's not just fat people. It's thin people who aren't thin enough.
No, I get that, but 1 in 8.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, but
I'm
also,
surprised it's
I
not
think
higher.
it's
Really?
In Los Angeles, maybe 1 in 2.
also these drugs started as just to treat diabetes or pre-diabetes. So I'm wondering if that is part of that statistic.
Oh, it would have
sure
to be.
it is.
Yeah, it's just whoever is using it. That blew my mind.
No, honestly, I was shocked that it was as low as 1 in 8.
Wow.
I guess pivoting to a different kind of capitalism around fatness is the new Apple Watch can detect if you have sleep apnea.
It's detecting.
At the very
motion.
least, it's detecting warning signs that you might have sleep apnea.
Yeah, I mean, what it's using is the accelerometer, and you would wear it to bed. And if you have witnessed someone sleeping who has sleep apnea, you know there are these convulsions where they're and the watch can detect that and put you on the track of you are apneic.
I kind of wish we could have put Dan's sleep apnea shudder
Impression.
online for everybody, because that was impressive.
It's not brand new technology.
No,
Samsung watches have this feature, and now Apple Watches, which are probably at least as common. I would have been excited for this as a like, hey, circumvent the whole fucking sleep study nonsense, which that was wishful thinking.
No.
That was obviously never going to be the case. But it at least, I think it is helpful for this. I have had several experiences with people that I've been close to that I've actually spent the night with where it's like, hey, you know, undiagnosed sleep apnea, I'm noticing this about you, like you're stopping breathing. And it took a pretty long time to convince them
Oh my God.
that it was the case. And in each case, it took actually recording it happening. This is the section of time that you stopped breathing. Let me play it for you. And I feel like this is a shortcut to that, which then is the follow-up with the doctor, becomes the sleep study, becomes treatment.
I'm curious about, so I feel like sleep apnea is so often thought of as like, oh, well, it's like a fat people thing, but it's not. And I'm
I know
curious how,
lots of skinny people who have it.
And it's
How
very
many-
common among bodybuilders.
yeah, but I'm curious how many more just like straight size people are going to be diagnosed with that sleep apnea from getting this, like, hey, you should check this out, and going to doctors and maybe just like having to the doctors be like, oh, you don't have sleep apnea. You're not fat.
You're not fat. You
Interesting.
can't have sleep apnea.
Yeah, I would be interested to hear.
But my watch says, oh, those crappy watches.
Because when I got diagnosed with sleep apnea, I had to like push my doctor to give me a sleep test because he's like, I mean, I guess if you think you have sleep
Yeah,
apnea,
he was
if you
super
really
resistant.
want to
what a
take a test.
strange kind of gaslighting.
Well, it was weird because, and I don't know what the source of it was, because it's not like Trevor was thin and like you can't be apneic because you're thin. So like, okay, he's fat. You can look at his neck and go like, it makes sense that he would choke on his fat in his sleep. I don't know what that was.
That's a very weird.
That's weird.
I mean,
Is it just like avoiding having to put the effort in to like work on that?
well,
guess.
to be fair, if anyone who's done the whole apnea journey, it is a climb. Because
Yeah,
you got to get
that's
the
true.
prescription. You got to go to the sleep center,
It's
which
so
is horrible. There's nothing
stupidly-
worse than
yeah.
a sleep study in a sleep center.
That is such an unpleasant experience.
And my father did it once, hated it. And then I think they wanted to retest him like years later. He's like, no, I am never doing that again. I don't care if I never sleep again. I am never going to the sleep center again.
Wow.
And they said, no, you can do it at home now. Cause now they have the home things
Yeah.
with the telemetry, which is possibly better. I don't know, but they claim to be less accurate.
it makes people more willing to do it,
Well, and
which is a
certainly,
good thing.
well, and my father's point was like, who the hell can sleep normally when they're in a foreign
Yeah.
bed that they had to drive through, hooked up to every machine in the room?
I mean, ultimately, I think what it is, and they don't really tell you this, or maybe sometimes they do, but really all they need is for you to be asleep for an hour.
yeah.
They don't need the whole night. They just need to see how many times you stop breathing in an hour and for how long.
Well, and to be fair, they don't want just 1 hour. They want an average of all the hours, but yes.
Every time I've been tested, it's like 3 hours of sleep and then they kick you out at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
They kick you out?
Yeah, they kick me out after a couple hours. I think it's because insurance pays by the hour.
Well,
that's my guess.
certainly those employees are being paid by the hour,
Yeah.
and they're not paying for them to be there after 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Right.
And to be fair, I don't think they want to be there after 2 a.m.
But it's just weird
Sure.
to like go in for a sleep study and then get home around 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And then like, do I sleep? Like, what do I do?
time for coffee.
So I did this last year, actually, because I was experiencing sleep apnea symptoms for most of last year. And I was like, and it weirdly took me a while to kind of pick up on it. I was kind of like, because Michael mentioned, like, he's like, hey, like you've been snoring lately. And I was like, okay. And then, which was a development. And then it was, I keep waking up like gasping for air. Guess what that is? And so I got a sleep. It took forever.
Yes.
Of course, as we all know, it took forever to actually get the fucking sleep study scheduled. Did the at-home version. I think I only got like 2.5, 3 hours of sleep overall. And it was like, yeah, like this is happening a couple times per hour, but it's within normal range, and it's you don't have sleep apnea.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Everybody wakes up gasping. You're fine.
Well, no, and it was so identifiably like this is a classic symptom of sleep apnea. And now, interestingly, part of it was that once I started thinking about it, the symptoms got worse.
Oh, of course.
And so I think there's an element of like just kind of being wound up about like, oh my God, I might not wake up tomorrow morning,
Okay.
like that kind of thing.
Here's my coup de grace anecdote. So, talking to a fat guy, and he goes to his doctor, and they say, we're going to have to take your sleep apnea machine away from you.
Ugh.
Because apparently, wearing an octopus on his face, he pushes it off while he sleeps. and I know a couple of people like this, they push off the mask when they sleep, but rather than giving them a new mask, they say, oh, your stats have fallen so far down that the insurance company has decided that you don't use it.
Yeah.
So now we're taking it away from you.
Yeah. They warned the shit out of me when I got my sleep apnea machine about that.
Yeah.
They were warning you.
Tape
you
it
have
to
to
your
use
face.
it every night.
Whatever
if you
you
don't
have
use it
to
every
do.
night, you will lose it.
Well, and it's not like he was non-compliant. It's just, I mean, in his dreams he was.
Now, I know a lot of people. I know a lot of people give horror stories about getting used to a sleep apnea machine. I just want to be the voice of encouragement here.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
my sleep
I love
apnea
it.
machine.
And
does happen.
there are
You do
so many
adjust.
different kinds of masks now to find something. And there's even a new technology with no mask.
That is weird to me.
Yeah, I
I do
know.
not like. I am very suspicious of this. Like, oh, there's no masks and no wires. It's they fucking put something in your chest, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
But for some people, it's a godsend
If we
because
have
there's
any
no mask.
listeners
Sure, yeah.
who have had this implant, I just feel like it's like
I
I would love to hear about it. I
Yeah.
would love to hear about it.
I would love to hear about that. If you're a listener who's had this procedure and has the implant, let us know.
Hey everyone, before we get into Fat Watch, I wanted to put an orthorexia trigger warning here. We talk about different types of foods and related topics, and some people could find that triggering. So if you want to skip that, you can skip forward in this episode to 31 minutes and 20 seconds. That's where the main subject starts. Okay, back to it.
You know who has opinions about sleep apnea machines? Our eagle! Fat Watch 2024!
We have a very opinionated eagle.
You know, if we make it to 500 episodes, we'll do a live show. We will have a eagle that Don will. I don't know if he'll catch it or release it.
He'll kiss it.
500, baby.
Don't add us, Peter.
So this one was a really interesting read for me. I've never actually read a scholar or an article based on scholarly work that made this argument ever, or put forward this premise.
So this is from Time Magazine by Jamie Ducharme. Oh, that's an awesome last name. And the headline is Why One Dietitian is Speaking Up for Ultra Processed Foods.
Yeah. So here's the egg. So much has been made about the quantity of processed foods in the American diet. And so many dietitians have been saying, no, you shouldn't eat processed foods. Okay.
Ultra processed.
Ultra processed, which is like, you should be ashamed of yourself processed. So there's two things there. One, for some people, that's all that's available because they live in food deserts.
Yeah.
And for another, what do you mean by processed? And so if you do get into processed, and it should be said, just as a foodie, let me tell you, unless you are foraging in a field, everything you eat is processed to some degree. You cook a steak, you cut up the cow, and you heated the meat. That's processed.
One of the examples given were a raw apple that has been picked from an orchard and then waxed and cleaned.
Yeah, where you have to start is for 99.99% of the people, unless you, again, are foraging in the woods, all food is processed. And certainly if you go camping and cook the food, okay, there's your processing. So it's just a question of degree. So there's that. And then there's, well, what do you actually mean when you say processed or ultra processed?
Right.
And so here's the thing. So ultra processed would include these two things. It would include the Cheetos that you're getting as a snack food, but it would also include the manipulated vegan chicken nuggets that have been, with denatured pea protein.
Yeah.
It includes both of those foods. And you have to step back and go, okay, well, those seem very different to me. You could argue that they're both terrible. However, it really comes back to this idea of what do you mean by healthy? And people keep using the word health like it actually means something objective. Like the word health is like the number 3. It is not, health is such a moving target and it is so prejudiced.
Right.
That, so the idea of avoid ultra processed foods for your health, where you just have like 2 ghost elements in that sentence.
Right. Yeah. Jessica Wilson's kind of take on this started in reaction to a 2023 sort of, I say experiment in air quotes, not a real experiment, but author and infectious disease physician, Dr. Chris Van Tulleken, had a book called Ultra Processed People. And in writing it, he did his sort of self-experiment of eating 80% quote unquote mostly processed foods like chips, soda, bag bread, frozen food, cereal, that kind of stuff. And as it quotes here, what happened to me is exactly what the research says would happen to everyone.
Oh, God.
He felt worse. He gained weight. His hormone levels went crazy. And the before and after MRI scans showed signs of changes in his brain. And it was highlighted the terrible emergency of society's love affair with ultra-processed foods. And so Jessica was like, okay, now hold on a second. If I do the same quote-unquote experiment, but I choose different kinds of ultra-processed foods, let's see what this like anecdotal experience is like for me.
Yeah.
And she did the experiment. She chose different kinds of foods that were still technically ultra-processed. She swapped her morning eggs for soy chorizo, replaced the thrown together lunches like sometimes as simple as beans and avocado and hot sauce with Trader Joe's ready-to-eat tamales, snacked on cashew milk, yogurt, and jam, and for dinner had Costco pupusas or maybe a chicken sausage with veggies and tater tots, like all processed foods. And she said she felt great, not only great, but better than normal. Mm-hmm. She can't necessarily attribute why, but it's just, it flies in the face of this declarative statement that, what's his face?
Did she get blood work done or anything like that?
I don't think it's mentioned
because
here.
I feel better is a terrible argument because it could be the placebo effect.
But it's some of the arguments that he put forward. So she's arguing the same.
No, but he had data at least. I'm not saying she's right or wrong. I'm not saying he's right or wrong.
But we can be very reactive about the things that we label our foods with, right? Yeah. The GMO issue.
I think there is a fine line and there's always a middle ground. And I think what Jessica Wilson kind of was doing was showing that people who rely on processed foods because of their schedules, because of if they have a disability where they can't cook for themselves, it provides a way for them to get food that is more sustainable because just of the convenience and the time factor.
Well, and there's no really good way to distinguish between is it processed because the chicken is already cut up or it's processed because they made the chicken in a lab.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's why the article talks about, with how loose all of these things are, you can like compare gummy bears to a can of kidney beans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they have similar levels of process. Mm-hmm. I just think this was so interesting because there's so much food shaming around processed foods.
Yep.
To me, the most compelling argument about this is the idea of access, right? Like, what do you have access to? Food deserts we've talked about before. It's a real thing. You may just not have access to your fucking farmer's market. It may just not exist in your area. Yeah. You may have access to a grocery store, which is too expensive, or McDonald's, which isn't. And what do you do when you're trying to feed your family? Like sometimes that's the reality of your life. And I think to the point of GMOs, like I feel like that's also the argument, which is that, okay, there are people that are starving across the world that we need to get food to, and we cannot produce this food naturally at high enough quantities to bring it to them.
Yeah, but watch this. If I say, great, that's great, Michael, just don't have a patent on it. All of a sudden that disappears then. All of a sudden that food no longer exists because there's no patent available.
Yeah, I feel like I watched a bullshit episode about this, and I'm trying to remember it, and I don't remember it well enough. But there's a Penn and Teller bullshit episode about GMOs and the idea that GMOs are this terrible, terrible invention.
No, it's not because they're going to kill. It's not because GMO food is substantially different. It's the economic.
That's what you're saying is a straw man argument.
That's the straw man's argument. It's not deadly. It's just it is basically making the food supply even more capitalistic.
Right.
By being able to sue farmers for proprietary seeds getting on their farms.
Right.
Yeah. What was it? It was a spore release. I remember Monsanto suing someone because
do it all the time.
Their spores from a neighbor's farm blew onto their corn and probably gave them a hybrid corn.
Yeah. So now Monsanto wants to cut their corn supply.
Right. So anyway, we're off the reservation at this point.
Well, this is not the solution to it, but one thing this led me down a rabbit hole is researching something called the NOVA food classification. Have you guys heard of this?
I have not.
First I've heard of it.
No.
It's not something that I think is useful to help us differentiate our food, but it was useful for me to help understanding the degrees of processing in the food.
All right.
So they have 4 different groups. They have group 1, unprocessed or minimally processed foods. So it's like literally from the field, you eat it. Group 2 is processed culinary ingredients, right? So that's anything where like you get it from pressing the food, like a nut butter would be a processed food, or something you get from a juice that you get from things that are squeezed out and done that way. Processed foods are things that have additives put in as they're processed.
Okay.
And then ultra processed foods are things that are like not recognizable from the original version anymore.
Interesting.
Right. And so while these classifications, it's from Brazil, are not necessarily useful for us to help differentiate them, reading through what made the different categories helped me understand processed foods in a way I haven't really thought about.
I like it as a framework for thinking. I don't think it has anything to do with health.
No.
I recommend following Jessica Wilson on social media. She's, at least on Instagram, jessicawilson.msrd. She does this thing, Ultra Processed Fridays, where and lately she's been doing it with her dad, tastes like different healthy sodas, like Olipop and like all of these ultra processed healthy soda alternatives.
Okay.
And they just kind of do taste tests and make fun of them. And it's very fun to watch. And she also
Kind
has
of
a
like
podcast.
our behind the scenes holiday episodes where we'll do
Yes.
like the different jelly beans and stuff.
Yeah, it's fun little taste tests. And she also does a weekly podcast, Making It Awkward, which kind of does deep dives into different health and diet and quote unquote obesity related topics.
Well, as a gamer, I like hanging out with my friends and eating enormous amounts of highly processed foods.
Yes.
It's one of the best ways to bond.
You're snorting that Cheeto dust. ain't
Oh,
you?
you have no
You
idea.
can't
the things
play
I would do to it.
D&D without D&D snacks. It's just not okay.
I find that, sharing food and playing games is a good way of bonding with people and getting closer with folks. And for me, a great way to make new friends, which
Yeah.
brings us over into our topic for the day.
How do you make new friends, meet new people? This has been a crazy relevant subject for me, interestingly, both personally in being kind of relatively new to the area that we just moved to, but also in talking to people on Bigger City who are like, hey, you know, Bigger Bash looked like so much fun. I want to go to my first event, but I don't know anyone.
Yep.
And I don't know how to meet people because I'm shy and introverted. And I'm terrified to go to something like that because I wouldn't know how to. I wouldn't want to just be standing there alone, and I don't know how to like walk up to somebody and introduce myself. And so it kind of came out of that, the idea of like making new friends and meeting people.
And I want to say, my time at Bigger Bash, I ended up talking to a lot of people that were there for their first time and that did not meet, were having trouble meeting some people, and just watching them sort of overcome that fear and start jumping in with both feet was fun. It was a very exciting, uplifting experience.
And unless you think that this is yet another episode about going to a Chub Chaser event,
No.
we're also going to talk about other ways to meet people.
Yeah,
that
in the
have
wild.
nothing in the wild that have
Yeah.
nothing to do with going to Las
No,
Vegas.
that was just a jumping. That was a jumping. off
That was a
point.
jumping off point.
Yeah.
I don't know, as a Gemini, I'm very extroverted and also like
Gemini TM.
very much the meme of like Gollum was like, no one likes you. You don't have any friends.
You don't have any friends.
I very like just like my hands pressed up against the mirror, doing that to myself. This is relevant to me for some things that I should be doing. And not getting more introverted and weird.
Oh, living with a Gemini. Nothing like it. So I don't know. I heard this story on NPR. I think, Don, maybe you heard the same story about they've done all these studies about you're healthier if you're in a community, you're healthier. And I feel like because Trevor and I both work from home, I don't do what a single guy would do. Like, and I certainly don't do the whole, single bon vivant gay guy thing where like, I have 2 brunches every weekend to go to and I have all these bar nights. I don't do that. I'm really, especially since the pandemic, very homebody. So I heard this thing on NPR about a lot of people who feel this way. And there are companies now that will put perfect strangers together.
Yep.
And
Yeah, Trevor and I just
They organize small dinner parties.
Yeah. Now, I should say this is, I'm going to talk
Fucking
about
monsters.
And yeah, if you're an introvert, this sounds like pure hell. But if you're an extrovert like me,
It sounds awesome to me.
Exactly. I fucking love this, right? I get to meet people. I get to meet brand new people in strange environments. I'm in. Now, keep in mind, strange environments means a restaurant I haven't been to, not skydiving. And it's basically, they make a big thing of like, this is not about your business, about promoting your business. This is not about dating. This is just about getting together with people you don't know at dinner.
Oh, yeah.
That's all it's about.
That sounds
that
hellish.
is like
I love it.
Exactly. I
think
do
it
too,
sounds
Don.
so
We're
cool.
extroverts.
It's a
They're
resource for like if it sounds appealing to you, then great. So I've had a handful of experiences recently. My partner Michael and I moved to Vegas, the Vegas area, somewhat recently, or at least recently enough that the first kind of year we were there, it was spent kind of dealing with crap. And then the start of the second year is like, okay, well, let's actually put down some roots. Let's make some local friends. Let's like actually kind of like spread our wings a little bit. And so then it was like, well, how do we do that?
Yeah.
Where do we start with that? And so part of me was like, maybe there's like game night somewhere. Maybe we get into it that way, but he's not really that into games. And so we kind of wanted to make couple friends and then, start with that at least. So it'd be something that he would include.
It's like totally Trevor and me.
Yeah. So Bigger City was a fantastic resource because I wanted friends in our community where you can just be yourselves, right? Where you don't have to worry about like negotiating like, okay, does this straight couple get us enough to just sort of relax around them?
Yeah.
And so Bigger City was a fantastic resource for just reaching out to people who like you can read their profile, you can see if there's enough in common.
How did you, I'm curious because people might want to know, how did you do that? Because if you live in a big enough city, and I mean, Vegas isn't huge, but there's a pretty big population number in your city.
Yeah.
How did you just find people that how did you figure out who to approach? Or
it happened two ways.
Okay.
So in the first sense, filtered by, I'm a chaser, I'm going to narrow by chubs, just let's start with that. And then, kind of skimming through profiles and again, like reading and seeing like what are their interests. Like if the name of the profile is like Bottom Chub 99 and there's nothing written on it, I'm skipping over it. That's not a friend. Like they're on there for a different reason.
Exactly.
Yeah. But if it's like, Movie Nerd 40, okay, like I can get in there. Let's start with the profile name. And then, in the profile, it like has their favorite movies. This is not a real person. So like I kind of am just filtering based on what it feels like they're putting out.
Yeah, good idea.
And then you start a conversation and you can tell pretty easily, I think, online based on how somebody communicates if they're compatible with, for me, like I need complete sentences. I need punctuation. I need to know that there's effort and thought going into how you're communicating.
And obviously you're looking for profiles that have something on them.
Yeah, exactly. So like you can filter like that and then it just becomes, hey, let's try it out. Let's get brunch together. Let's see
coffee.
How the conversation goes.
It's so hard to set up a platonic lunch date with a torso.
Yeah, like you can filter pretty easily based on what the person is putting out. So
there's a joke about giving head in there somewhere. I just haven't found it yet.
So this worked out three different ways. One attempt was I would say a failure. One attempt was like hanging out, feeling like it doesn't really work out, and eventually was like, this is an incompatibility issue. I'd rather not proceed. One of them worked out great. It was actually a personal connection that Trevor and Dan sent me up with, and we sort of met them, and it was like, oh, these people are cool. Let's keep hanging out. That was kind of luck, just like you guys happen to know somebody cool. Oh. And then the third way was really interesting, which was that there was a Chub Chaser couple moving to the Vegas area.
Ooh.
They moved from Texas, and the chaser reached out to me.
Wonderful.
And found me on Bigger City and was just like, hey.
What a prince.
And it was amazing. And so we've hung out with them. We really enjoy their company. Like we have a lot of just, again, similar. I would say focus on communication style.
And by the way, the reason I said such a prince is because the bar for chasers is so fucking low. It's kind of like,
what I meant.
It's like, he did the dishes. Wow.
What a child. No, it was totally like that. And so for me, like, obviously people have a lot of different ranges of what they find acceptable. I'm not a club guy. I don't need to go out drinking every night. I would hate that.
Well, and that's, for traditional gay life, that's where you met your friends. You would meet people at the bars, and if you didn't fuck them, you would be friends with them, and you got to
talk about the people that you were fucking.
Exactly. That was the function of the,
So like, that's fine. If that's your jam, then you probably don't have trouble meeting people. Like that's already set up for you. And so I feel like most of the people I talked to, and there were 2 people very recently actually, who were, again, we're talking about wanting to go to their first event, to meet people in the community. Maybe it's for hookups, but also like just making friends. And I was like, hey, like Bigger Vegas, like you can meet me there.
Yeah.
At minimum, I can introduce you to the people I know. And that is a starting place. And I said, my advice for it was also...
I'm sorry. This was the people who are already in Vegas. They'd moved there.
No, this is 2 other people not related to any of the stories I've told so far.
Okay.
Had the exact same experience talking to me saying, hey, I want to go to my first event to meet people in the community.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know how to start with that. I don't know how to make friends. I don't want to show up alone and be kind of the one loner who's not.
But they were already thinking about Bigger Vegas.
They were already thinking about it.
Yeah.
The interest was there. And so I was like, first of all, you would be maybe not so shocked to hear how many people are in the exact same boat as you. There are so many people just like that, myself included, when I first started, when we did Bigger Vegas a couple years ago. And second of all, the way that I kind of got through it, obviously I already knew the 3 of you and you guys were all going. That helped. But also I just found people on Bigger City that were going to Bigger Vegas for the first time and said, hey, this is my first time going. How about you? And they were like, yeah. And then you just talk about that. And you can kind of develop some level of rapport so that when you show up, you have a way to meet somebody and hang out. And I know that there's like different approaches as far as like, don't be in your clique and don't close yourself off to other people you could meet while you're there. And I get that. But I think for the shy introverts in the room, it is really, really fun and helpful to have a buddy, at least. And that I have found Bigger City to be an invaluable tool for making new friends.
Yeah. And I think it's always a two-edged sword. It's like having a buddy at an event is great. Just don't make that a lifeboat. Like you and I are going to stay here in our lifeboat. No one will enter. And it's going to be you and me in Vegas, and the event is happening around us.
I think of them more as a base, somewhere you can run into and tag, and you're safe while you're in contact. And okay, I'm going back off into the game, and you leave them behind.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit. I get what you're saying. I will also say, in the spirit of what you've said, which is be open for where the ship takes you. If you make a lifelong friend because that's how you went through the event together, that's fucking fantastic.
That's fine. That's fine. But here are the 2 things. I think there's 2 ways through this. There is the advice of, joining a group that is already in process. There's also, if you are part of that group, if you know you're a clique, if you know that this is your 5th event and you always go with the same people, please do make an effort. If you see somebody by themselves, invite them over. They can say no. They can say, no, I'm meeting someone else, whatever they do. But try to include people. And the other side of that is, as I always say, there is never going to be a point at which your friends say, Michael, we're doing absolutely nothing this afternoon. You should go explore.
Right.
They are never going to
get sent off on your own.
So the idea, because this happens a lot, where a chaser will come up to a chub and the chub says, oh, well, I don't know what my friends are doing. They're doing something. I promise you. There is never a point where they're not doing something. So, make it.
I don't know. There are times where they're waiting around for I wonder what our other chub friend is doing.
Yeah, but there's never
waiting for him to rejoin so they can actually. They live in stasis outside of that friendship.
Like Borg pods.
So I'm going to pivot a little bit into a different suggestion. So anyone who's listened to the podcast and heard me say anything, they know I'm going to suggest game groups. Game groups are a great way.
Yeah, same.
And your hobbies and all those things.
And lots of these Chub Chaser events have so many opportunities for that.
And all of these are wonderful things. I'm going to suggest something a little different this time around, though. I'm going to suggest the fear of the new as being a great way to meet new people, right? So there are hobbies, there are improvement things you can do that are so outside your norm that when you try them, you're going to be the new kid. You're going to be the one on uncertain footing. And that the vulnerability of that can be an opening for people to connect to you, right? So, for example, there's this group that has been suggested to me multiple times, as I have not participated in it yet. It's something I'm still thinking about at some point, called Toastmasters.
Oh, of course.
Toastmasters is a group where they work on public speaking skills.
Like toasting
I
things?
wanted it to be about toast.
Well, just not that kind of toast.
If it was
about
brings
toast.
different kinds of toast.
Yeah.
And Toastmasters
You can make it that way.
Toastmasters goes back like 50, 100 years.
It's a long-standing group. It's international.
Yeah.
They have branches in every major city. And I have heard that it's a great method to not only practice a new skill that a lot of us would love to be better at, but because you're talking about yourself and your experiences in a public setting, you're functionally introducing yourself to a group of people over and over and over. And apparently I've met a lot of people who say they have made some great long-standing things. That sort of engagement is something that's a little scary for me. It's a little outside the norm. And I think the activity of it might make me a little bit more open and vulnerable to meeting new people, right? So while gaming is something I'm secure in, that I feel I have a strong foundation in, and I'm going to be.
I'm sorry. This is my nightmare. I was in the.
I actually was going to mediate
The
this,
division across the room between me and Trevor and Dan and Don.
Well, no, I was going to kind of talk about that unless you want to jump in immediately.
No, I want Don to finish.
But the point is, putting yourself into a situation that you're curious about and maybe a little uncomfortable in can be a great way to make yourself more open to new experiences and new people.
Firmly agree with that. Yeah.
I like the idea of that, but I'm just I feel like there's been times where I've been like, I'm going to go outside my comfort zone. And I'm just like imagining myself like, hello, Toastmasters, it's time for my and then I just like vomit marbles and slip on them.
Slip on them, fall, break a leg. Yeah.
The bird lays a nest in your hair. And you have to like roll away on roller skates.
But see, here's the thing. And I feel I can speak to Don's point because he and I are both extroverts. You're an extrovert, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you kidding?
Yeah. Okay. So I think what you said about curiosity, or no, Trevor, you said about curiosity. I think it has to be that your curiosity is more important to you at that moment than your comfort.
Yeah.
Or your fear. Or your fear.
Maybe. But curiosity of like, oh, I've always wanted to do that. Like the first time, Don, you went kayaking. Right? Your curiosity got the better of you more so than like, oh, I'm fat, I'll turn over. They won't have it. Blah, blah, blah. There were a number of concerns, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But you were so into like, oh my God, that looks like something. Okay. For me, and I'm also an extrovert, there are plenty of things like, oh, wow, you're really smart. I should play chess. No, I fucking shouldn't. I'm not going to do that. Like there's a lot of stuff where, yes, that would be outside my comfort zone. And yes, that sounds potentially interesting, but I know from over 50 years of experience that when I do something because I think I should, it is an unmitigated failure. I can't tell you how many courses I flunked in college because that seemed like something I should know more about and be interesting. I could not fucking pass it.
I have an maybe not outside of the box suggestion, but very different suggestion from everything that's come up so far. Which is because I was thinking about like what Don was talking about, and like Dan, you're talking about the service I was like, if we're talking about somebody for whom money is a factor, where trying a bunch of new things might be cost prohibitive, or somebody who really has either accessibility issues like leaving the house or going somewhere new, if you are at all into using your computer, which if you're at home a lot, you probably are, finding Twitch streamers that stream about topics you're interested in, because it's not just video games. It's people stream about all kinds of stuff. And if you find streamers that are on the smaller side, like they don't have hundreds and hundreds of people in the stream, maybe they have a dozen.
Oh, I see.
You can initiate conversations with them. You can talk to them. They will talk right back to you. You can develop relationships, and it's kind of parasocial, but it can grow outside of that pretty easily.
Can you give me an example, just because of my towering ignorance on the subject? What would be something on Twitch, not game-based, that I might be interested in?
That you specifically might be interested in, or just not a game?
That's not technologically based.
People do puzzles. They stream themselves solving puzzles.
Like a jigsaw puzzle?
Yeah, like literally a jigsaw puzzle.
And it's video, I assume.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's just an example I have. I'm not actually a big stream watcher. That's not really my thing, but I know people who really get a lot of social connection out of doing that.
I think I knew someone who used to do a mixology channel where they would like mix a drink and talk with people over Twitch.
Absolutely. There's a lot of stuff like that. And my suggestion is find the smaller streamers that don't have huge followings where you really can actually have a dialogue with them. You type into the chat, they respond verbally, they can address you by name, at least whatever your screen name is. And it is a parasocial relationship, but I think there is also something very satisfying about that when you're bonding over a topic you both really enjoy.
Yeah, because topics are, especially I think for men, it's so important to have a topic to bond over. I used to tell my class this. It's why men invented fishing trips. Because otherwise they couldn't talk to each other.
Yeah.
They needed a reason to be alone for 6 hours.
And Twitch is free. You can be on Twitch for free.
Let us know your ideas for making friends in the community. I'm sure people have a whole lot of stuff outside of what we said. I don't know. Let us know your friendship stories.
Yeah. What's been your most successful? I just put myself out there and made a brand new friend out of nothing. What's been your most successful version of that?
And if you're like me, it's fine. We don't need other people. It'll just get weird. It's fine. We can just close the curtain.
Well, for our bit today.
What's our bit, Don?
I thought we would wander into the wild and wacky world of processed foods since we were talking about it earlier today.
It all comes back.
But yeah, like I said, I knew nothing. I actually realized how little I knew about processed foods when I started doing this sort of deep dive into it.
Well, it's a process.
And so I've got a weird hodgepodge of questions here on various topics. All right. So Dan, correct me if the science is wrong on this one. I got this from the Global Science Research Journal. So I'm based off the name of it, I'm hoping that it's accurate.
It sounds so sciencey.
So we know that pasteurization of milk is pretty important to most people's health who drink milk.
Yeah.
Heating the milk kills off bacteria and other biological factors in raw milk that can be harmful to our health. But what about homogenization? Right? The straightforward process of milk homogenization uses high pressure to break down the milk fat into smaller particles, mixing and dispersing it throughout the milk. The final result is more homogeneous mixture since the minute particles remain suspended in the milk, right? Homogenization is a step in the process that does not involve any additives or chemical treatment, but is homogenized milk better or worse for us health-wise? 1,
oh dear.
It is better for you as the process breaks down to the fats and vitamins into more easily absorbed forms. 2, it is better for you because it whitens the milk, making it more desirable for the consumer and keeps it shelf-stable longer.
Which just makes, okay, whatever.
3, it is bad for you because the process damages some of the vitamins in milk. Or 4, it is bad for you because it increases the fat content throughout the milk, making it harder to digest.
I'm going to say 3 just because I feel like that's what
the vitamin damaging one.
I feel like I hear that from like the secret white supremacists on TikTok.
We're picking which one is true.
Which one is true?
I think the goofiest one is that it whitens the milk and that makes it more appealing and shelf stable. So I'm going to go with that.
Yeah.
I don't even understand that argument. It's just
that's why I picked it.
Like whiter is better.
Really?
Whiter is better.
I'm so curious.
Like what
that can't be right. It can't be right.
I don't see any. There is a more uniformly high fat content. I'm going to go with that's the one. I think
number 4.
I think they're all 1,000% bullshit. But if I had to pick one that someone believes in, I think it's number 4.
Okay. The answer, according to Global Science Research Journal, is it's bad for you because the process damages some of the vitamins in the milk.
There you go, Carver.
I couldn't quite understand the argument. You needed it basically was saying it was breaking down the size of the molecules, which made it harder to absorb.
Well, and what threw me off of that is vitamins. I could have gone with maybe amino acids, but anyway.
All right. Not all processed foods are necessarily bad for you. According to the AARP, all but one of the following processed foods are touted as healthy. Okay? Which of the following is not a healthy food? 1, canned beans. 2, nut butters. 3, rotisserie chicken. Or 4, vegan meats.
Nut butters.
Nut butters
Which is not a healthy food?
Is not a healthy food.
It's fat, and fat is unhealthy.
It's not necessarily a healthy
it's really like, because you use the word health, it's like picking like which one of these is immoral.
I want to say vegan meat just because I feel like the chicken still has protein.
Dan?
Yeah, given that most vegan cuisine is blessed and sanctified by the health church, I'm going to go with Michael's answer that all fat is bad, therefore nut butters.
That's what I think.
The correct answer, the one not touted as healthy by the AARP, are vegan meats. It's the one that's least controlled. The additives in there could be anything.
All right, fine.
So there you go.
There you go.
Last question of the day. While there's a lot of discussion around the dangers of processed food, there's one factor that most people agree on. Processed food tends to be much faster to digest and easier to absorb than unprocessed food. Something a lot of us don't consider is that it actually takes calories to eat food. Digesting calories actually takes calories. It's estimated that many processed food takes how much less energy to process to eat than unprocessed food.
I can't believe somebody's tracking this.
There's an average to this. 1, 25%. 2, 50%. 3, 75%. Or 4, Don's full of shit. It takes more energy to digest processed food than unprocessed.
Oh, wow.
So 25, 50, 75, or it actually takes...
It would depend on the processed food.
This is an average,
I'm going to say 25%.
50%. Like,
Okay.
50%, sure.
I'm tempted by the Don's full of shit answer, but I'm going to go with 25.
Okay. The correct answer is apparently 50% on average.
Oh, look at
It
you.
takes 50% less calories to digest these processed foods than the more raw, unprocessed versions of them. There you go.
I think I misunderstood the question then. Whatever.
Well,
Anyway.
dear listener, did you misunderstand the question? Trevor, if they did, where could they come to lodge a complaint?
Well, we're on Instagram and Twitter as @BigFatGayPod. We're on Facebook as the Big Fat Gay Podcast. Leave us 5 stars there. Leave us 5 stars on your preferred podcast platform and leave us a review too. Those help. See the articles we talked about at www.bigfatgaypod.com. Also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/bigfatgaypod. I forgot that, sorry. Maybe you are enjoying the podcast with your favorite highly processed breakfast cereal, Big Fat Gay Potos. And there's a treat at the bottom of the box and you're shaking. And it's Michael and you're always after his Lucky Charms. So.
It's an Irish accent. Watch out!